Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for joining our webinar this afternoon. My name is John Calvello. I'm the Vice President of Institutional Sales at Tutor.com, a service of the Princeton Review. And today, we're going to be going through an equity analysis. So we're looking at insights from a year of online tutoring across K-12 programs. And I'm thrilled to announce that one of our wonderful partners are here with us today also from Fresno Unified School District. We have Edith Navarro here with us as well, giving us some insights into her work and the district. And so one of the things that I want to do before we get started is just briefly go through the agenda so everyone knows what we're going to be speaking about today. And then we'll really get into everything that we want to do. So what we're going to do today in our agenda is we're going to spend some time doing introductions, introducing the wonderful panel that we have here with us today, taking a look at K-12 trends and insights that we've uncovered year to date, and then over the past 3 years as well. Most of our time is going to be our discussion with Fresno Unified School District with Edith, who's here with us today. Then we're going to look at student support best practices, engagement strategies for students, parents, and teachers. And then if there's time at the end, we'll make sure we have some time for Q&A as well. So without further ado, I want to present our panelists to the group here today. So again, my name is John Calvello, Vice President of Institutional Sales at Tutor.com and the Princeton Review. So I want to introduce our panelists that we have here with us today. First, I will introduce Dr. Amy Dietzman. If you want to introduce yourself and your role to webinar today, that would be great.
Sure, thank you. Hi, I'm Amy Dietzman. I'm the Senior Director of Learning Strategies and Professional Development. I work on the Learning Services team at Tutor.com. So anything having to do with our tutors and how we bring our tutors on, how they tutor in the session, anything to do with tutors is sort of what I do. And then I also do a lot of things like this. I do a lot of webinars and just sort of talk about what we're learning from our sessions and what we know about students and what we know about the trends that we're seeing with students and things like student success. Maybe you've seen me in some of those webinars. I do a lot of those as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. And then finally, can introduce our featured partner with us today, Edith Navarro. It was great spending time with you a few weeks back in Orlando at Council of Greater City Schools. Fantastic to spend time with you again here today. So if you want to introduce yourself to everyone, that would be great.
Well, thank you, John. Yes, I'm Edith Navarro. I oversee the Curriculum Instruction and Professional Learning Department for Fresno Unified. We're located in Central California, the third largest district in California. And my day consists of everything from pre-K, TK to 12th grade. So we're looking at all the curricular areas: math, history, science, ethnic studies, ELA, our dual immersion programs. Of course, to say that encompasses a great team that I work with that all have great skill sets, but I have the pleasure of working with them and assuring for student success. Again, TK, pre-K through 12.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, then what I'll do is I'll just give a brief overview of our organization. So people might not know, but Tutor.com is a service of the Princeton Review. So we are two trusted partners, one incredible team, equitable learning for all students. Our mission is to instill hope, advance equity, catalyze achievement, and to ensure that every single student has access to one-to-one tutoring anytime, anywhere, in any subject. What I want to do is give a quick overview of our organization, what we've done over the past few years, because that'll really help give some context to what we're going to talk about and how we're interpreting the data that we're seeing over the past 2 to 3 years. So one important thing I want to highlight is Tutor.com has been providing online on-demand tutoring for over 20 years. That's important because we're educational partners to thousands of schools, libraries, organizations, the Department of Defense, supporting students throughout the country, throughout the world with academic tutoring. So we have experts in more than 250 subjects, but most importantly, we've been doing this since the year 2000. And since then, we've provided more than 23 million one-to-one unique tutoring sessions. So that really gives us some context about what we're going to talk about today as we're seeing the trends emerge over the past 2 and 3 years. And most recently, since 2014, Tutor.com has been a service of the Princeton Review. So to really get to the core of what we want to talk about today, key elements of an equitable academic support solution, The way that I think about this is actually through two major themes and then three important key elements that you see here. The first sort of theme that I think about when we're creating an equitable academic support program is to ensure that all students have access to tutoring, right? That historically hasn't always been key, and it's a really big initiative that we have been working really hard to get into place and support our partners, our students and families. So we want to make sure all students have access to tutoring, whether that's an entire school, a district, a grade level cohort of students. That way we can meet that student whenever they need at that moment of need for those students. The other piece that's really important, what we're going to focus on today, is really creating a strong relationship with a partner. Because one of the things we know is students that often need the most help are not the easiest to find, right? So we really need to create a customized plan to target those students, to really create a pathway to reach them, to move the needle. And the way that we do that across both of those themes is through the three elements that you see here on the screen, right? So it is a data-driven program where we're really doing needs for each student's districts, giving that information to the staff, the students, personalized, scalable, and accessible to each learner at that moment of need that I mentioned. And really importantly, it engages that entire school community. So each stakeholder is all driving towards the same mission, the same goal, right? So we're supporting teachers, parents, administrators, students. Really important to make sure we're all driving towards that same mission of getting students that targeted support and help they need when they need it. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to looking at K-12 trends, what we've seen take place over the past 2 to 3 years. And we're really going to focus on three kind of distinct areas where we've seen tutoring needs shifting. The first is increased use of tutoring year over year over year. Right? We are continuously supporting more and more students, making sure they're getting the help they need to get to the grade level that we need them to be at. Additionally, we are seeing a strong demand for math, English, and science. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody who's on this webinar today. But one of the things that we are seeing a lot is a rise in school day usage. And I think that's really important. And that really speaks to the theme of how we need to work closely with our partners. And a big part of that is really being flexible to meet those students where they are. And again, to find those students that need that help. So whether we are doing an intervention block during the school day, it is a targeted before or after school program. Those are really important initiatives for us to make sure we reach those students. So those are the three things that we're going to talk about today. The first being that increase of tutoring year over year. So as I mentioned, we're seeing that strong demand for math, English, and science. In this year, year to date, we've delivered 2.5 times more sessions, tutoring sessions than we did this time last year in 2021. And last year in 2021, we delivered 2 times more than we did in 2020. So we're still seeing there is an enormous need to support students and families, making sure they have access to academic tutoring. That theme is still growing with us. And additionally, as you can see from the chart here, most of those subjects are really taking place with math, right? That eats up most of the chart that we're looking at. But we're also seeing a lot of support students need for English, science, social studies, foreign languages, technology, business, and student services. Additionally, if we want to dig in a little bit deeper, we can look at sessions served by subject from 2020 to 2021 and 2022. We're seeing considerable gains in English, social studies, math, and world languages, right? So the highest gains we're seeing are in social studies, and Espanol science, as well as social studies. We're seeing a huge increase in the sessions that we are delivering in Espanol. So we have those sessions available in math, science, social studies, and social skills. Again, that goes for us meeting students where they are. So we're seeing huge increases in that area. And finally, we're seeing a greater need for live help than drop-off support. Tutor.com does have an essay drop-off where students can submit an open-ended essay and they get targeted feedback in less than 12 hours. But we're seeing a huge need for connecting with a live person for a one-to-one tutoring session. So that need continues to increase. And the other thing that we're seeing that I want to quickly mention is while we are seeing tons of session growth in math, English, and science, we're actually helping more and more subject areas as well. So if you see those two charts in the bottom right, really what that's showing is we're actually helping students in all sessions. We're adding more types of subject areas. So we're seeing targeted growth, but we're helping students everywhere at the same time. And then the next slide that I kind of want to go through is really just targeting math, since that was the biggest piece of the pie that we looked at, right? So looking at curricular challenges in math, one of the things that Tutor.com does is we support our partners is create early intervention alerts. So this is when a student comes to us and they might not have the prerequisite knowledge to get through their question, right? So what we do is we flag that, we instantly send an alert to that teacher, that administrator, whomever we deem with our partner needs to get that information. Additionally, if someone does not have mastery content knowledge after that tutoring session ends, so if they're not able to successfully model a similar problem, they're still not getting it, we want to send that information back to our partners. That way they can really make actionable decisions, continue to curate differentiated instruction in that classroom, and really just make sure we have an open relationship and we're all driving towards that same goal. What this shows us is most of the math is really taking place in Algebra 1, right? So operations with real numbers, solving linear equations. And honestly, that's not surprising, right? There's a huge focus to support students in 8th and 9th grade. They're really building those foundational skills to continue their math throughout their educational career. So that's probably not a surprise to a lot of people in this webinar as well. And then finally, the last thing that I kind of want to mention is that rise in school day usage, right? Because I think this is really important. This is probably the biggest shift that we've seen as we work with our partners, because we have a lot of really innovative, amazing partners. We're going to talk with Fresno in just a few moments, as Edith is here, but finding new ways to serve students. I think that is one of the most important lessons that we are continuing to learn as we evolve with our partners. And so what we're seeing is class time utilization, right? So teachers are using one-to-one tutoring during class time, whether it's during those intervention blocks or if we're having classrooms set up with different centers, students are working on a problem, that whole table is connecting to an individual tutor. Each student has their own tutor. We're seeing that happen more and more during the school day. So we've reached those students that need that targeted help. We're seeing more and more involvement with our partners becoming the before and after school program support. So again, we're reaching those students where they are. Additionally, the support we've probably been most known for is that after hours support. So if a student needs help at 8, 9, 10, even 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, they can instantly get connected with a live tutor that's a subject area master. They can do that. And then finally, just expanding our range of support services. So academic goals, we have supplemental help, as needed tutoring, test preparation curated by the Princeton Review, college essay feedback. So continuously making sure we're evolving and meeting our partners where they are. And I think with that is a great segue to start talking about the partner that we have here with us today. So again, Edith, I know you did a quick introduction, so it'll be really great to learn from you, hear about what you're doing in your district, your initiatives, how you're using the service. So what I'll do before we dig into that is just give a quick overview of the topics we're going to cover, right? Some of the questions so everyone here can kind of see what we're going to talk about. So first is just getting a general overview about your district, about your students, why you decided to bring Tutor.com into the district, how you're currently utilizing the service during the school day with your students after school, how you'll be further integrating Tutor.com into the school day as we move into next semester, as we move into next year, and then finally, what impact has 24/7 one-to-one tutoring had on your students and on your families. So with that, again, I just want to thank you again for being here. I know you are incredibly busy. So it really does mean a lot to have you here. You're a fantastic partner. And so, I think the first thing that would be great for you to share is just tell us a little bit about your district and the students that you serve.
Absolutely. Thank you. And when watching your prior slides, I thought, boy, we do fit right in there, because Fresno Unified is really following right along with starting out with a need. We saw higher in math, and now we're going into the classroom. So I'm delighted to be able to speak about that. Fresno Unified, as I mentioned earlier, is the third largest district in California. We are located right in the central, the growing belt, where most of produce is grown, that is shipped all over the country. We have around 72,000 students in our district, although we are impacted with neighboring districts right around us. And we have the largest concentration of poverty in the Valley in California. So we deal with just a beautiful, diverse group of students in that 74,000. We have 100% free and reduced lunch, but when you look at the actual breakdown, it's around 90% of our students are socially, economically disadvantaged. Our demographics, we are about 70% Hispanic. We are 8% white, 8% African American, and around 10% Southeast Asian. Our students are Hmong students, Southeast Asian, and then the other mix is what brings up our 100% of our students. Our English learners, although we are 70% Hispanic, we are about 20% English learners in our 74,000 students, 1% foster youth. We do have students, migrant students that are coming in. So we are a beautiful melting pot of diversity and of students. We have a teaching staff of around 5,000 teachers. Fresno Unified, like many districts, we were impacted. You know, the pandemic was a perfect storm, wasn't it? There was a terrible situation of a pandemic, but an opportunity where one-time funds came to us, and more so this great need to service our students who at that time were learning virtually or who were put into a virtual platform. So that's where we're still at question number 1. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm already jumping to question number 2.
I couldn't do a better segue if I tried. So,
well, why did we decide to bring Tutor.com? So here we have this beautiful, diverse valley and student population of 74,000 students, and that's not even including our pre-K and TK. So that's our K-12 population there. And we find ourselves in a pandemic where our students are at home, and where many times these students did not have the resources. We were a one-on-one, or we quickly became a one-on-one district, but they didn't have the resource as in someone at home to help them with grade level content. And at the same time, we struggled with how do you bring grade level content and supports to students, knowing that the best thing we could do at that time was that intensive high usage tutoring, right? At that intensive laser-like tutoring. So we knew that, and that's when we developed our relationship with Tutor.com. It has since morphed from really what you could think of as almost a Band-Aid. We needed to tutor kids and we need to be in their home, and we couldn't do it 24 hours. Okay. That's when we brought Tutor.com in, but it was so much more than that, because because it started building the mindset of a student. We know socially, emotionally, students who were at home, there also was some devastation of not being amongst their peers. The maturation of a student, depending on where they were, really took a hit. We know this, families know this, our community knew this. What Tutor.com was able to offer them was a link to the outside with an academic intentionality and a purpose. So it helped with that mindset of I can't do it. So it helped our students better build their efficacy in tackling struggling problems. So that's how we used Tutor.com. Our students were able to access tutoring, true homework help during a time when they could not access a teacher because it was 24 hours. And our students not going to school in a traditional way, we found that they were using Tutor.com a lot of times at 10 o'clock at night. During the brick and mortar times, a student hopefully would not be using it as much at 10 o'clock at night, right? But it gave the families what they needed was that flexibility. So currently, what's happened since we came back in space? Well, we did not stop our partnership with Tutor.com, but we needed to leverage it a little bit differently, didn't we? We started looking at students that came back that still had gaps. And we know students always have gaps. And sometimes as educators, we don't want to hear, oh, we're dealing with gaps. Well, every summer we deal with gaps, don't we? But some of these gaps and these skill builds and these foundational skills were a little bit different than we'd seen in the past, because there is something about being in front of your teacher and making an array for math, or learning writing skills and having feedback given and going back and re-looking at an essay that students didn't have. But Tutor.com gave us that. It gave the ability for tutoring to take on almost a textile methodology, even though it was virtual, because students could put up their math problems and they could break it into graphs, and they could go in there and look at tangibly what would this look like. So as we came back in space, we needed to blend the two, the teacher instruction and the ability to bring in those prerequisite skills with intentionality very quickly so that our teachers could work on acceleration. We did not want our teachers, and it was human nature to have a student come in missing skills to want to teach down to those skills, those missing below grade level skills. Tutor.com gave us the opportunity, or gives us the opportunity, to keep our teachers at grade level, but address the student missing gaps through intentional tutoring during the day. What might that look like? Let's go back. I want to just do this real quick. What might that look like? You are a 5th grade classroom. Your teacher has given instruction. The teacher does a checking for understanding, recognizes that Edith, John, and Amy have a gap in a prerequisite skills for a two-step equation. We go over to a center. We are able to go right into Tutor.com, use the exact problems that the teacher's working on, the grade level two-step equation, and Tutor.com tutor, and it's personalized and it's private, is able to help me recognize where my gap is so that I can then work at grade level. Because we don't want students to miss grade level instruction. We don't want students to get the prerequisites out of grade level instruction, right? And that's what Tutor.com is able to do. What does that do to a student's self-efficacy? It helps the student realize they do have many of those skills. It's not, Edith, you don't have any of the skills, you can't do two-step equation. It's, Edith, you're missing this one component. And once giving that, you can absolutely do grade level work. That changes my mind. I now realize I am a mathematician too, not, I can never do this. Mindset is a huge component of the students being successful in Fresno Unified. Language barriers are huge components, and having that one-to-one tutoring during that instruction time, designed as intervention time, not that main core time, or even main core time because they're working on a grade level problem. It's been very impactful in our students, and that's super important because we're looking at the whole child. Now we can go to the next thing. So what are we going to be doing next, I think is the ask.
Yes.
Okay. It's kind of 3 and 4 here, and I'm so sorry about that, but where we had to extend it. So part of 3 was how are you currently using it, and kind of 4 is still going to be a blend. Once we came back in space, we realized that Tutor.com, as I gave you that scenario for 3rd grade, or I'm going to give you a 9th grade algebra scenario, which is where we are using, we hired in teaching fellows or tutors from our local college, but we made sure they had training on how to get students on Tutor.com. So that the college student can use 3 or 4 students and use Tutor.com as a way to move those 3 or 4 students who have common misconceptions. But we also went into our after school program and we trained all of our after school program tutors, because a 2nd grader may have difficulty going on to Tutor.com, not because it's a difficult platform, because they're 2nd graders. They're 2nd graders. So, and Tutor.com is able to serve all the way from our TK all the way to 12th grade, to our IB, to our dual enrollment, to our AP courses, to our pathways, our medical pathways. So there's such a wide variety that having our tutors trained, because your after school folks can get everyone from a 6th grader struggling with pre-algebra conceptions to a 1st grader who tangibly isn't able to make groups, right? So we trained all of our tutors. We have 109 sites in Fresno Unified. We trained someone at every single site as our champion. So now they're able to grab that data. They're able to read through what the students' responses are. And I can tell you overall, our students say, I appreciated this tutor. And the tutors do not give the answers, because you can read the transcripts. They appreciate the prompting. That builds that student self-efficacy. Did you realize you already knew the answer? It was a misconception, but you already have these great problem-solving skills. And it really works on the mathematical principles. And I know I'm hitting math heavy, and I don't mean to, because I'm going to talk about further in a second. And John, you probably didn't want me to talk this long. You should have given me a timer. But it really helps with students being able to have conversations about the math, right? Because we wanted students to be able to have conversations and to challenge thinking and challenge their own thinking. That's pretty difficult to happen when it's you by yourself at night. But when you have a tutor, you can say, but I thought, shouldn't I? Is it possible that? And you can have those higher level critical conversations that you need to have to develop that thinking skill that is just as important when you're doing that progression through math. So what have we seen happen in Fresno Unified? Well, we already have over 2,000 hours being utilized. I think we had 10,000 the year before. We've gone from being very heavily students thinking math when they thought of Tutor.com to now students are turning in their writing essays. It's as simple as a 24-hour turnaround, getting feedback, because we know feedback is what changes, is what the most impactful thing on an essay is. How many times have all of us throughout our careers, we've gotten our degrees, gotten something back, you saw a grade on it, but you had no idea why, or no idea how to make it better. And we can point our fingers at our teachers, we really can, but as a secondary language arts teacher, you're pointing your finger at a person who had 182 students at any given time. And I did want to give feedback. So what did I have to do? I had to narrow my scope of the feedback, because otherwise I could not do that. But with Tutor.com, they can get feedback not just on, their claims and their targets and their, their thesis, but they can get feedback on the tone. They can get feedback on so many things in their paper that the paper then becomes richer, which is what students want and what we want as teachers. And teachers are seeing that, and teachers are starting to comment like, hey, I really appreciate when my kids are doing that. And they're leveraging that and saying, hey, here's our timeline, here's our pacing, here's where you can turn this into Tutor.com. We've seen a lot of usage with our supplemental resources and our academic videos and a lot of test prep. So that's something we want to continue to work on. We've got a pilot program going on. I say pilot because 9th grade algebra, I think as a system, as an educational entity, we're going after 9th grade credit recovery, and we're going after we've always gone after algebra, knowing that it's a gateway to success in high school and college, knowing that our chemistry class is really married to our algebra, completion rate, right? We know these are married, we know these are gateway courses. So we have our one of our schools, and the teachers have agreed, and I love it when a PLC gets together, a professional learning community, and they've agreed to have their students deploy based upon that checking for understanding and that skill set needed. And then as they deploy, knowing that they're going to go right into a Tutor.com session about that skill set, which is at grade level, but is a missing conception. So that's what we have some teachers, some algebra teachers doing. At one campus, we have 7 comprehensive campuses, but we have 11 high school campuses in total. And this is a school of choice. It's a magnet school, a CTE pathway school, where algebra is so impactful in a lot of the work that they're doing in those pathways, but they've aligned it so they can do that with their students, making sure their scope, their sequence, their pacing is all on board. So that's what we've done, and Tutor.com has graciously, they have the tutors for us that we need. We've picked the days that we know will be higher usage, because it does take some planning. The teachers are making intentional planning, knowing which days next semester they will be sending students utilizing this resource. So that's how we plan on continuing to do it. We're continually working with our parents. And I know I'm segueing quick, and I'm sorry if I'm doing too quick, but we're continually working with our parents, because the word tutoring sometimes leads people to believe, and we saw this, I think it's very common. We saw our B students reaching out with the word tutoring to become A students, which is of course what we want. But I really want my struggling student to realize that they too have the skill sets, that simple gaps and simple misunderstandings can turn into successes for them once they're cleared up, that they don't have to do complete intervention or remedial work. That's where we don't want to see our struggling students. And so we have made banners that we've sent to every school where we say homework help, because homework, though you may not like it as a 7th grader, homework help sounds great. Tutoring, well, that's for those kids that are already super smart, and I have this efficacy and this mindset that I'm struggling with. So we've done that, and we'll continue to do that and help our parents realize that the tutoring is really individualized, personalized tutoring. So impact, I've mentioned it throughout this session, and I am the kind of person that my mind goes all over, so I apologize. It's had an impact on mindset. It's had an impact on social emotional. It's had an impact on our math scores. Throughout California, and I'm sure throughout the nation, math scores have suffered with the pandemic, but we've got several schools, our middle schools uniquely, that did not go back, that were able to maintain. And a lot of that is because we're able to bring those tutors right in the class and keep our teachers focused on grade level rigor and not remediation. That's really been our hit. Like many, we're really focusing heavily on the 3 through 8 path in support of that 9th grade algebra class that we want to see students pass the first time. So that's the impact. When you read our student surveys, it's always spectacular. It's always in above 95, 96, 97% of students saying they appreciated the tutor. I don't think this is one of my questions, but I would say what would be my challenge, my problem of practice is getting it out to more students. I have 74,000 students. How do I help that student that is maybe complacent with a 2.6 average realize they themselves have the potential to be whatever they want to be, and they could utilize all the resources available to us down the road as we continue to fund Tutor.com through one-time funding. It's our hopes that schools will see the viability of this and they will fund it themselves through their local control funding. So these are problems of practice that sit on my desk that I continue to work on, but I don't find them a mountain to climb, because I think as more parents and more students and more administrators realize the impact of Tutor.com, it's going to be a easy question for them to answer, where they're going to allocate their student time, their treasure, their talent, their resources.
Yeah, first off, just thank you. I really appreciate all of your time today. I really do. I know that you're incredibly busy, and honestly, it's just incredible. I mean, I've met a lot of districts administrators all over the country, and everyone at the Princeton team is just so genuine, so focused on making an impact. I appreciate everything you do for your students, appreciate you as a partner. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. All right, so I think, so what I'll do is at this point, I'll turn over the session to Dr. Dietzman to talk about homework and classwork support, and again, how we create those MOs and create those partnerships like we just heard from Fresno, and how we go about doing that work. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I hate following Edith, but then I love it too, because now I'm all pumped up. Hopefully I'm as passionate as she is. She told us she was passionate. She sure was. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can support students inside and outside the classroom. We know that so many students have responsibilities, hobbies, jobs and sports, and all kinds of things that keep them busy right after school. And those students are usually unable to receive that traditional, that we think of, face-to-face support that schools might offer. So they log in to work on a paper, maybe late at night after practice or after work, or after they've taken care of all of their little siblings. You know, who knows what responsibilities some of these students have. And so we find students logging in for help at 11 or 12 at night. I mean, this is a real scenario. And traditionally, we have found that the evening hours, and I say traditionally, between on Monday through Thursday have really been the most busy times for our K-12 tutors, Monday through Thursday evenings. But since we offer tutoring virtually 24/7, we can be there for all students. And then we're going to talk a little bit more. So the next slide is going to show you other ways that we can support students, whether it be Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Our goal is to become part of the classroom routine. This is when it works the best. Some teachers require that students turn in a rough draft to a tutor to get feedback before the revision process, which Edith just talked about. Some teachers will assign study guides to be used with tutors. Some will use us for credit recovery, or even those high achieving students, like those who are preparing for an AP exam. Younger students who might be working in stations could also use tutoring service right in the middle of the class period, in the middle of the school day. And then, as John mentioned, you know, we are seeing that school day usage is growing quite exponentially in K-12. So that inside the classroom area is really growing. But calling it homework help is also a good point. So outside the classroom, there are so many creative ways to teach students to advocate for themselves. Even if the work is prescribed, it still teaches students that they can ask for help and they can get support. So some of the most successful scenarios are when teachers require students to use tutoring a certain number of times in a semester maybe, or just right before a test, just to get caught up after an absence is a good way to use tutoring. Teachers can provide extra credit questions that students have to complete with a tutor, or maybe students who have below a certain grade, or maybe they scored below a C on a test. Maybe they're required to work with a tutor for test correction or whatever they might need to do to bring their grade up. So those are just some ways that we've really seen teachers can be creative in partnering with us and getting their students to use the service. We also support students with any learning disabilities or physical challenges, and we do this in a couple of different ways. First off, we do have an accessible classroom, so screen readers and things like that work in our classroom, and we also have an app so students can do it on their phones. But we also really find that a lot of students who have learning disabilities really like the anonymous nature of our service because they can log in. The tutor only sees their first name and doesn't know anything. We don't see their IEP. We don't see their 504. And students sometimes enjoy that anonymity and they don't tell us. And so if a student doesn't self-identify and say, you know, I struggle with ADHD or whatever it might be, the tutor won't know that. But what we teach our tutors to do is to read some signs and signals. If a student says, oh, I'm a little bit of a slow reader, could you slow down or something like that, that might be a sign. And we teach our tutors to choose different approaches based on how the session's going. So if the session seems like it's moving too quickly for this student and they need to slow down, they may choose a different approach. Every session is differentiated for every student. So it doesn't matter what challenges the students bring with them to the session, we will figure out what works for them and meet them right where they are. So that's how we meet all of those students. Then on the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about English language learners. We do have an ELL subject, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Students in this subject usually use the voice tool because as you may know, many of our sessions are done either through voice or through chat. And so older students will often choose to use chat because they like to type back and forth with their tutor, especially students who may be on the autism spectrum. We found that they really enjoy the chat feature. And then other students, younger students, and students obviously with maybe learning a language, they will choose to use voice, which is most appropriate for them. And we do the same thing that happens in ELL classrooms. Many of our tutors in this subject are actually ELL tutors or former teachers or former teachers. So they really know the strategies that they need to use with students. And you can see all of those on the screen. I won't read those to you. And then we'll talk briefly about how we engage parents and students with the support of teachers. We find in order for a program to be successful, which John already said this, we need the buy-in from teachers. We need help communicating with families, and we need teachers to be our partners, and we need administrators to be our partners. We need more Ediths in the world who are out there like cheering us on. That's what we're looking for. So let's talk about that. One of the things that we do is work with schools to provide the messaging that they need, whether that's flyers or banners, big banners that say homework help, like Fresno has, signs, social media graphics in English and in Spanish. So sometimes we can send home information in Spanish so that the parents understand what's happening. We're also visiting schools. We go and train teachers. We actually also can walk into classrooms and train the students, all with the teachers' help. We all have all the students get online and practice what it is. Like we said earlier, a second grade student's going to have a little bit of trouble logging in the first time without a little bit of support, whether it's a parent or whether it's a teacher or whether it's one of our staff. We like to help them at least the first time, and we find that a lot of younger students do need parents' help logging in when they're at home. So we find that it's really important for us to try to reach those students in every way and help them along the way. We found that if students have their first experience with a tutor in the classroom and they understand how it works, then they're going to be more likely to go home and say, I need support. And I remember that Tutor.com thing, and that was cool. I thought it was a robot, but it was really a person, and I liked it, which, by the way, a lot of them say. And so now I'm going to log in and get help from that tutor. We also have lots and lots of webinars like this one, where we can help school leaders and teachers on many different education related topics. It doesn't always have to do with tutoring. And so that's another thing I told you that I love to do, is help in lots of different ways. And then, like I mentioned before, we help schools and teachers get the word out. We have videos, all kinds of graphics, ways for teachers to share in their newsletters or on their teacher websites. Schools can do the same, again, in order to reach all families and provide equitable access for all students. We find that being a partner with the school and the teachers results in the most usage and the biggest gains for students. And now I'll pass it back to John.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. So the last thing that I want to mention before we start to wrap up today's webinar is looking ahead to the future. And again, everything we do is really just based on feedback that we hear from our partners, where they continue to want help and how we can evolve with them in the future. And so for academic support, one of the things that we know is it has to be individualized, customized, and centralized. So one of the things that we've done is created learner engagements online. It's a platform we have that empowers our partners, empowers districts to really create and manage a platform for high dosage tutoring that happens during the school day. It's a difficult thing to do, from just finding time to schedule, to finding tutors, to rolling it out. So, we're just growing with our partners and doing more tutoring during the school day to support our partners. So everything we do is just based on what we learn and how we continue to support more students. So with that, I certainly want to thank Fresno Unified School District. Thank Edith again for all of your time today, talking about the great work that we're doing. Thank you, Amy, for joining the webinar as well. And this time I'll see if there's any questions that came up in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Edith, John, Amy, for an amazing webinar. Looking at the questions now. Let's see. This one would be for Edith. Which strategies have you found to be the most helpful for engaging and communicating with teachers and parents in Fresno?
Having a champion at every school site was certainly the first strategy, because then we asked that champion to be in space with their site and explain to them about Tutor.com. But we did follow that up, and Tutor.com gave us, we personalized, once they gave it to us, flyers for parents, which teachers then had to be able to articulate, like at all the conferences. It's a perfect time to hand a flyer to parents. The banners outside, we have websites, every school website. We have something called Peach Jar, which is a document for a strategy to get a document out on every website in the district, and it has a Tutor.com flyer. It's in multiple languages. That was really important. Offering training of all the paras, the after-school tutors, and the in-classroom tutors. That was a way for teachers to know what's going on. But we also do something unique in Fresno Unified that Tutor.com has partnered with us. We do a virtual professional learning summit where we offer up to 200 different courses. Tutor.com is one of those, and Tutor.com is offered for secondary teachers, AP teachers, DLI teachers, elementary teachers. Our rep did those trainings. They were 90 minutes. We had over 3,000 teachers sign up. We were able to compensate them. So we offer it as professional learning. We've gone in during buyback days to multiple schools and done a PL across a region. We have 7 regions. Our region has, say, 11 elementary schools. We've met them all virtually and done a PL, and we've created a video. So we've kind of hit it on multiple ways, knowing that you have the early adopters and you have the naysayers. But knowing that regardless of where that teacher stands, the kid needs that access. So that's what we've done. But we will continue to look for innovative ways. Perhaps competitions, we've thought about those things. We brainstorm, but we want things to be intrinsic, not extrinsic. So we toggle back and forth.
Awesome, thank you. John, I think this one would be for you. It's more of a data question. What's contributing to the significant increase in Espanol sessions?
I mean, I think the way that I would approach that question is we just meet students where they are. And I think having so many Spanish-speaking tutors in the subjects that we talked about allows students to get the access in a way that they're most comfortable getting, right? It's making pathways for them. So I think that's a big part of what we're seeing and why we see that increase.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question I'm seeing, what are best practices for teachers to make the most use of early alerts, both in and outside of the classroom? So Amy, I think this one might pertain to your slides.
Sure, this is great. Well, like with any data, it's important to look at it and use it. So that's the first step, is sometimes there's so much data available to us that it becomes a little overwhelming, but then spend a little time analyzing, figure out what it's telling you. So we give early alerts for 4 reasons, but the 2 main ones that I think we should focus on are when student lacks prerequisite knowledge and if the student didn't achieve content mastery in the session. And there's a lot of different reasons that this could happen, but checking in with those students to see why are they struggling is really the best practice. That's the first thing, is to look at this as one data point. It's telling us one thing, and how can we use that data in conjunction with other data that we have on the students, and try to see how we can meet their needs. Is it that they need additional intervention? Is it that they need additional tutoring? It could mean a lot of things. And so there's not really one right answer for it, but I think it's important to just to pay attention to what these early alerts are saying and what the tutors are noticing in the session. So it's the tutor who makes the determination if the student didn't have the prerequisite knowledge, or if the student didn't achieve content mastery in the session. And so the tutor's the one who's telling the schools, hey, this student, might need a little attention. And then it's up to the school and the teacher to decide how they want to address that, and maybe take a look at the session. And that's another option, is always you can rewatch the session, you can read the session transcripts and sort of see what was going on. I mean, no doubt there's times when a student is just goofing off in the session. And when that happens, of course they didn't get any content mastery. But there's also times when the student's trying really hard and it's not clicking for them. And so they might need some additional intervention.
Thank you, Amy. I think that's it for questions. John, I'm going to pass it back to you for final remarks.
Sure. No, I certainly appreciate all the time today. Love sharing all the information that we're seeing. I'm always passionate about, really helping all stakeholders, right? From students to families, parents, teachers, administrators. That's why we do the work we do. And certainly the partnerships that we have with our districts is just incredible. And I always look forward to hearing that information, and having Edith here was fantastic. So if anybody has any additional questions that they didn't ask or they want to follow up with, certainly feel free to reach out to myself or to Dr. Dietzman, and we'd be happy to get back to you. But I really do appreciate it. Thank you.